this guy, Ronald James Reed, that just learn how to invest and learn how money works and end up with millions of dollars, even though you're a janitor, which was, I think, a good start to the book.
There was one part at the beginning. Oh yeah, this part was way cool. In chapter one, it says your personal experiences with money make up about 0.0000000, a whole lot of zeros. 0.1% of what happened in the world, maybe 80% of how you think the world
Oh,
works. So equally smart people can disagree about how and why recessions happen, how you should invest your money, why you should prioritize, or what you should prioritize, how much you should risk take on. So I just thought it was interesting how like we know so little, but it dictates so much, and we think we know so much. Yeah, I thought actually the part about President Reagan was it President Reagan that said, yeah, oh, President Kennedy. This is what he said about the Depression. I have no firsthand knowledge of the Depression. My family had one of the greatest fortunes of the world, and it was worth more than ever then. We had bigger houses, more servants, we traveled more, but the only thing I saw directly was my father hired some extra gardeners just to give them a job so they could eat. I literally did not learn about the Depression until I read about it at Harvard. That's insane.
that is insane.
So it's just crazy how your experience dictates so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And this comes from lesson one about how no one's crazy, but
Yeah.
their experiences with money. And so he goes to talk about, so that's the Great Depression, but then he talks about just like people's experience with money. He talks about stocks.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you had invested in the S&P 500, starting in, if you were born in 1970, the S&P increased almost tenfold during your teens and 20s. But if you were born 20 years earlier in 1950, the market literally went nowhere. And you can see it
That's
shows a
so
graph of
crazy.
it going up. And so whenever you're older, these people, their perceptions on money and investing would be like, we don't need to invest in the S&P 500.
It's not going to do anything for us.
Let's invest in other things. And that makes up like everything they think about. And so I think about like my experiences with money, it's so real that it makes up like 80% of what I think about, even though it may not be
It's
completely
nothing.
accurate.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
that's so nuts. Chapter two is pretty good. Chapter two, it was titles Luck and Risk.
Oh, this one's
Nothing as
good.
good or as bad as it seems. That's from Scott Galloway, who's a NYU professor. He has some really good stuff about just economics in general.
Yeah.
He's really good to listen to. But I can't remember honestly a ton from chapter two. I don't know, did you have any big takeaways from chapter two?
I think so. The big story was on Bill Gates.
Oh
And
yeah.
so he went to Lakeside High School, which is just outside Seattle. And it was this guy named Bill Duggal. He was a World War II Navy pilot and a math and science teacher. And he believed that book study wasn't enough without real world experience. And so he wanted to know something about computers. So he convinced the high school to spend the $3,000 it got from its annual rummage sale, which, anyways, I don't know this, to lease a teletype model 30 computer hookup to the General Electric mainframe terminal for the computer time sharing. And most graduate schools, he said at the time in 1968, did not even have a computer, but somehow this high school outside Seattle was the only school there. I think he said 303 million high school students around the world at that time. And there were 300 students that went to Lakeside High School. So literally 1 in 1 million kids got access to computer high school. Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and he talks about
Kent.
another guy, Kent.
Paul. Oh wait, Kent, what's his last name?
I don't know. Kent Evans.
Right.
All had access to the computer, and then they talked about this and talked about access, like just 1 out of 1 million chances that they would
Yeah.
get access to computer. Kent was going to be
With the guy.
with them, like the third
Yeah.
co-founder. And Bill Gates even says he probably agreed more with Kent than he did with Paul Allen. And they just thought the same and did all these things, and he would have been a co-founder of Microsoft, but he died in a mountaineering accident. And he said every year there's around 3 dozen mountaineering deaths in the United States. The odds of being killed in a mountain in a high school are roughly 1 in 1 million. So it's like Bill Gates, 1 in 1 million that he would have access to a computer, can't 1 in 1 million that he wanted. And it's who decides on luck and risk. Like essentially, it's not as what were your big takeaways from that? Like how nothing is as good as bad as it seems. How does the author connect that to that thought?
I think how he connects it is like your failures or like Kent's situation. Well, Kent's is pretty extreme.
Yeah,
But oh man, life is so good right now. This sucks. It's actually not that bad. You're probably like three steps, like two steps away from something being absolutely insane. Like
yeah.
even Bill Gates says it. He said if there had been no Lakeside, there'd be no Microsoft. And
Lakeside being the high
yeah,
school.
Lakeside High School. The fact that he went to Lakeside is just the fact that Microsoft exists. And so
Yeah,
it's like you could be one decision away, then or one decision away from something big and like your biggest lucky point.
yeah, and it just so happened that yeah, that like without Lakeside, there wouldn't be Microsoft. And one thing I think the author tries to get at as well with that is that he even says luck and risk are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort.
Yeah.
And like obviously Bill Gates and Paul Allen, they worked hard to create Microsoft, but without the luck of being at this high school, it wouldn't have been happened. Like it wouldn't have happened. And then risk, like he went mountaineering and he died. Like one out of a million people
Yeah.
in high school at his age die. And it's just, I think one thing he's saying is like you can have a lot of individual effort, but it also requires a lot of luck. And if something bad happens, and say there's like an 80% chance of succeeding, he talks about this later.
Yeah, the
It's like
20%. Yeah.
you may just be the 20%, and then people are like, let's not do that business practice because it failed, or you may not want to try again, but really it might
Yeah.
have just been the 20%. And it's just luck and risk are very closely related. And
Yeah, he says that later on. Be careful who you praise and admire. Be careful who you look down upon and wish to become.
yeah,
Focus less on individuals and more on broad patterns.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because the one individual may have just been the one out of a million that got
Right.
lucky. And so following his business practices and stuff like that may not work out for you because you're not going to be the one in the million
Right.
and following the broad patterns instead.
Yeah. I thought that in chapter 2, everything worth pursuing has less than 100. This was interesting. You sorry. Everything worth pursuing has 100% odds of succeeding, and risk is just what happens when you have on the unfortunate side of the equation. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted. Oh, did failed businesses not try hard enough, or bad investments not thought through well enough, or wayward careers due to laziness? Sometimes, yes, of course, but how much? It's hard to know. I
Yeah,
think that's like the hardest part about all of this. It's just, and I think that's where he ties in the it's not as bad as good as it seems. It's like it could be 1% off. You could be the 20%, and you need 1 more percent that you would have been the 80%.
yeah.
So
It's
kind of
just
extreme.
it's just crazy, yeah. And this chapter is great. Talking about Geico, Mark Zuckerberg, which is Facebook, Microsoft, and all these different
Yahoo.
people,
Yeah.
Yahoo, and gives a lot of really a good chapter. But I think one of our, do you have any other thoughts about chapter two?
Let's go to chapter 3.
So chapter 3 was definitely our favorite chapter so far, which I think he was building us up for this one. And he talks about how this one's called Never Enough when rich people do crazy things. And I think the whole point of this, the whole thing I took away from it is like, what is enough? Like, at what point are you like, I made, like,
Enough, I'm good.
I made enough money, like, I don't need to try to keep pursuing it because he gave a lot of examples in this chapter of people that just didn't have enough, and it was like hundreds of millions.
Like Bernie Madoff, and then who's the
Yeah,
guy? Muser,
you can't even say his
Mhm.
name. Oh wait, I don't know if we're talking.
Raj Gupta,
Yeah, right. Rahar
Rajat Gupta.
Gupta. So Gupta was reportedly at one point in his life worth 100 million. And he sat on the board of directors at Goldman Sachs, and he started from like nothing, and he built his way up here. I think he gave the example of like some people start on third base, and
Yeah.
Gupta wasn't even
Didn't even on the
even
field.
see the ballpark. Like he
Yeah.
was completely, and he had somehow come up to be worth $100 million. But he heard about right near the crash that Warren Buffett was going to invest 5 billion into the bank to help it survive. And so he immediately hung up the phone on the board meeting. He called his
friend, didn't he?
called his friend that helps him with his investments, or his hedge fund manager is what it
Mhm.
was. Oh, these are okay, yeah. Called his hedge fund manager and immediately bought 175,000 shares of Goldman Sachs, which ended up making him 17 million in profits. and of course that's insider trading, went to prison, ruined their careers, but had 100 million, and he's like, a huge deal came up that was illegal, and he's like, I want more.
Yeah,
And it
it's
wasn't
crazy.
wasn't enough for him.
That's so nuts. I think on the next page after that, I underlined this as it's one of those things that's so obvious as it is overlooked. Few of us will ever have 100 million as Gupta or Madoff did. But a measurable percentage of those reading this book will, at some point in their life, earn a salary or have a sum of money sufficient to cover every reasonable thing they need and a lot of what they want. And so I put beside that, I said, this is the goal. Something that Abby and I talk a lot about is,
Wife.
yeah, it's my wife, yeah, is, I should have said that, is being rich in experience. Like money is so, it's great, but like we also want to be rich in experience, like for what we've experienced, we want like our family to experience. And so I think that's the goal is just having enough to cover all the bases and then provide for the fun and feel like you're not destitute and feel like you have more potential.
Yeah.
Basically have enough to provide the potential that you didn't have. Is kind
Yeah.
of and the way I look at it. And then there's happiness is equals as results minus expectations. I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works, but
Let's talk about that for a second. Results equal happiness minus expectations. And so if your expectations are just like for example, for this guy, it was like I didn't know where his expectations were. And I guess it was a lot more than he was making. And it just kept trying to go.
the moving goalpost. Yeah.
It was like, yeah, it was the moving goalpost, I think is the analogy they gave about like how it just kept moving down and you can never reach it. And it's like maybe it's like I'll be happy once I get there. And so it's like
You're never there.
you're already way past it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think modern capitalism of pro two things, generating wealth and generating envy. I thought that was pretty interesting because that's what we live in. We live in a capitalist society and it just fuels you to never have enough, pretty much.
No, yeah, on that same thing, that's the one thing he talked about. Social comparison
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
problem here. So he talks about a rookie baseball player making 500,000 a year. And then maybe he's on the same team as Mike Trout, who has a 12-year contract, 430 million. And so Mike Trout, he could be on this baseball team making 500,000, which is way more than
It's great.
enough, other than everything.
I think he'd be so happy if he had it.
And but Mike Trout's making $36 million a year,
Yeah.
literally 72 times more money than he is. But then if you look at Mike Trout, to make it, he could look at the top 10. This is I thought was crazy.
Yeah, that was
I didn't know.
the hedge fund
Top
returns.
top 10 highest paid hedge fund managers in 2018, so 7 years ago. You need to earn at least 340 million in 1 year. And so maybe Trout's comparing his income to that. So, oh my gosh, I need to make more money. And the hedge fund manager who makes 340 million compares himself to the top 5 hedge fund managers who make 770 million in 2018.
It's a Warren Buffett, then a Jeff Bezos, and so it just never ends.
Oh yeah, and then that Warren Buffett, whose fortune increased by 3.5 billion in 2018, could look up to Jeff Bezos, who increased 24 billion in 2018. And the craziest statistics of them all, think about that first player making 500,000 in the first year. Jeff Bezos made 24 billion in 2018, a sum that equates to more per hour than the rich baseball player made in a full year. Jeff Bezos was making more than 500,000 per hour.
That's insane.
Than he was making in a full year. So there's always room to compare incomes. I can't remember if it was this chapter or the other chapter that talked about how there is like more, you can tell two brothers. You remember this statistic?
Oh, that was this one. Yeah, it's
So if you have two brothers, they have there's more likely that they have a closer salary than they are in any genetic way. So if you had a brother that was rich and tall, it was more likely that the other brother was rich than he would be tall.
Yeah, which is
So that was crazy.
Yeah. But I thought that was a really that's the favorite chapter I've read so far.
Yeah.
There's one, oh, the only way to win a fight is not begin with, to accept that you might have enough, even if it's less than those around you.
Yeah.
That goes back to the rich in experience. What have you experienced? Because I don't know, when we die, that's all we take with us, what we know, what we learn. So
yeah, so true. And yeah. And there's always room to compare, and it just makes you feel, I think someone Verge Stanfield said that he said something like comparison either makes you feel worse about yourself or it'll increase pride within yourself.
Right.
And both of those things are bad
Yeah.
things. And
So
anyways, great chapters.
unreal.
And especially the third chapter, which is great. Next chapter, we're talking about confounding compounding, which is going to be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be unreal.
And then talking about getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. And anyways, there's a lot of other good things in the book. We're only just barely scratching the surface on here.
Yeah, now we're gonna do this is every couple chapters, get together, make a video, do a review.
Yeah.
Anyways,
We do a book club.
what we're learning right now is insane.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, this is so cool.
Seriously, an amazing book. James Clear even said, bursting with ideas, everyone should own a copy. He's the author of Atomic Habits.
Oh, I was like, who's that?
He's
I
awesome.
saw there was someone on here. I saw
Cool.
oh, Tim Ferriss is on there.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week. That's a really good book too. Anyways, that's the book club.
Yeah.
Sweet.